Hey everybody, finally getting around to covering Ultimate Spider-Man Miles Morales origin story. If you like this video, please, leave a thumbs up. Try to get this video to like 1,000 likes, because it is Miles Morales, mind you. And we're getting close to the 400 subscriber goal on YouTube, youtube.com/talkativecarl. Once you reach that milestone, I will be doing a Hot Ones challenge video where I'll actually buy the hot sauces from the show, try them out while answering all you guys questions via YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. And definitely check out my Patreon, where there's affordable tier lists where you can put in some recommendations for reviews or topics. Yeah, we're nearly well, there's gonna be future Spider-Man related comics, but I'm trying to get through the gambit of particular Spider-Man variants. Now, of course, I'm going through like Miles Morales now. The next one is kind of like an event where Miles Morales, Ultimate Miles Morales meets 616 Peter Parker. Then after that, we'll be covering Superior Spider-Man, and then finally wrapping the Spider-Man review massive content reviews with the first Spider-Verse comic story. And I'm eager to know which one of the comics that I covered so far were your favorite. Like, was it Spider-Girl MC2 universe, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Man 2099, Miles Morales, the video game Spider-Man, the regular 616 Spider-Man, Spider-Gwen, yeah, just or Spider-Man 1602. Which one was you guys' favorite? Once I cover these last three in the next few weeks, I will be getting right into the X-Men stuff. There's gonna be a lot of X-Men related content coming down the pipeline, so look forward to that. So anyway, yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man, written by Brian Michael Bendis, and art by Pacelli, which here and there they changed artists for a few spots, but yeah. So if you've seen Into the Spider-Verse, you pretty much know the origin story here. And and I did cover Ultimate Peter Parker last week, where it's only like the first run, but there's another run, because there's a run that went through his origin story up until like this major flood event from like issue 1 up to 133. And then there's another run that came out a few years later. They covered from issue 1 up till the moment of Ultimate Peter Parker's death in from 1 to 160. And right as that's wrapping up, he excuse me, Bendis was creating Miles Morales. This is the first creation of Miles Morales. And of course, if you're not in the know, around that time there was a bunch of racist idiots who was giving grief about like, oh, Black Spider-Man, boo, like that kind of attitude. It turns out Miles became one of the you're talking about like great original characters that feels like any kind of tokenism involved. No, they're because tokenism is just throwing it in there without any kind of substance. Yeah, Bendis really put some thought behind the creation of Miles Morales. It's just like I love, like, you know, Godspeed. When I covered like my Flash comic book review last year with the origin of Godspeed, which, by the way, check out that review on my YouTube channel as well, because I love the creation of that, because that, you know, it fed into the story. And it's like, you know, because that's why I don't like Punchline. You just wanted to try to catch lightning in a bottle with the whole, because Harley Quinn's another one, a great original character, and there was some meat behind her story, and she quickly became like, well, not quickly, but over time she became like a pillar of the DC universe. And it's like there was some substance to the character. That's why she was so beloved, and people over time kept adding to it. And Punchline is just like a, you know, we still need like a Harley Quinn variant, because now that Harley Quinn's like, you know, on that line of anti-hero to hero now status, and not like a villain, we need like a villain type that still fills the Harley Quinn role. So let's just throw in a Punchline. And it's like, yeah, there was an origin story to her, but it's still pretty lame. And it's like, you just do it just to do it, and and it is a shame, because writers, you know, end up creating certain individuals hoping that it gets picked up in a TV show or a movie, so you can try to get revenue through that, because, you know, making money through comics, you know, I imagine, you know, it pays decently, but not as much as you probably think. But Miles Morales was an incredible original character, and honestly, you know, is near that same height as Peter Parker. He's right up there, and is such a beloved character. Half Puerto Rican, half black. And get this, and I'm not sure anybody ever brought this up ever, but his mother's name's Rio Morales, and his father's name oh crap, is it Aaron Davis or Aaron Davis? Jefferson Davis. His uncle, his name's Aaron Davis. Now, for some reason, she didn't take on her husband's last name. But I don't know, it's probably some kind of inside joke, because I'm pretty sure it's a jazz musician or was a blues musician, one of the two, where there is an artist named Miles Davis. And maybe because, like, oh, I don't know, maybe it's because the comic book company could not use, because JoJo's Bizarre Adventure run into that kind of issues, utilizing certain, because their gimmick is having certain characters named, and their power is named after a particular musical artist and a particular song of that artist. So they can't have a character literally named Miles Davis, so they just went with the mother's last name, Miles Morales, which is fine. I just thought it's like, wow, they didn't go with Miles Davis, or could easily be like I swear it might be in a comic or something. Somebody had to point out that fact, because like some kind of joke where it's like, I can't go around with his name named Miles Davis, because people gonna think I'm an old black blues magician or something. But clearly, you know, Miles is 13 years old at this point, and this is like literally days before Peter's death. And it's just like in the movies, but kind of not, because in the movies, Jefferson is a cop, just like in the video game. But in the comics, at least current comics, he's like a scientist or something like that, because they never transfer that occupation to the comics. Because like from my memory, he's connected to some kind of scientist, type of profession. And of course, but they stuck with real Miraz being like a whole nurse and everything like that. So of course they live in Brooklyn, and the father, just like in the movies, has like a, well, not a personal thing against Spider-Man, but just superheroes in general. There's a moment where you see like Human Torch and Iceman racing in the air above the city, and he's just having like a just in his feelings about superheroes, and like it's kind of like J. Jonah Jameson, where it's like, oh, they're just menaces. But they go to this, it's kind of like a lottery thing they went to, where they pick certain people to go to this very fancy school called Brooklyn Visions, where it's kind of like almost like a college campus in a way, where you, during a weekday, you get to go there. It helps like underprivileged kids get a leg up with like the best teachings in order to better their lives. So you bunk there during the weekday, and then during the weekend you go home. So it was almost nearly round the clock, kind of like, oh, you're just studying all these different types of fields in the school. And of course, Miles is hesitant. It's kind of like in the movie, where it's like he's unsure of himself, of what he wants to do, and he doesn't want to. He feels like other people are probably better suited for this, but his parents, want this for him for a better life and everything like that. And of course, excuse me. And of course, they're the parents. That's they're his parents. They want what's best for him, and this school is it. But they ain't like necessarily taking yes, sure, he's 13, but he's still a human being. He's old enough to have a say in what type of education he would want, or at least have an inkling of what he wants to do with his life. And kind of wish they kind of had this kind of conversation long before you get to this point, to like ask this guy, like, what do you want? What do you want to do? What is the general thing you want to do at the very least? It's like, because if it's like something akin to like like a scientist or something like that, then yeah, Brooklyn Visions would give you that kind of opportunity. And of course, in a game he's into like music, but in a movie he's into art. I personally think he should have, in the comics they should lean into the art, because I think that really speaks volume to the character more so than music, in my opinion. Because I think Spider-Man has that music in the bag already, because he's actually part of a band. It's never a moment where Miles actually like tries to rap or anything like that. He just appreciates music. But you see him play at times, utilizing different types of art and graffiti, and it's like that is a skill set, and I kind of want that to be like something he leans into, or as something like a profession, doing something that he really loves to do. Creative expression. Sorry to drink my tea here. And of course, his name comes up, and he ends up bunking with his best friend Genki, who looks like Ned from the movies, and John Watts knew definitely knew this kid looks just like Genki because everybody else says he looked just like Miles Morales' best friends from the comics. It's like a shot for shot image. It's like uncanny how he looks like. And of course, the actor slimmed down considerably. All the way till like No Way Home. So of course he's Ned Leeds, and Ned Leeds in the comics is the Hobgoblin. So eventually he's gonna have to set him up to be like the Hobgoblin, and that's gonna be like a whole drama in of itself in future Spider-Man stories. Feeling kind of like overwhelmed, he goes to his uncle Aaron, and of course Uncle Aaron is the Prowler here, and he's breaking into the old Oscorp building, and one of the spider experiments got into his one of his bags. He brought it home. It crawls out, bites Miles on the hand, and of course Miles passes out a little bit, which Jefferson happened to show up at that time, and it's like had this blow up fight between him and his brother because, as you all should know, Aaron is a criminal, but not to the same extent that, but worse than what his brother actually thinks, because his brother thinks he's just a common thief, but Aaron up his game with this kind of high-tech suit, taking his criminal activity to new heights, vying for the position of being a potential new kingpin. But he'd be later tussling with Ultimate Scorpion, where he's just like a big burly Hispanic dude from Mexico having this big whip chain with a metal hook at the end, kind of like a scorpion tail, and just whips it around to like kill people with. And Miles soon quickly realizes there's powers bubbling up where he's turning invisible, not on command. And then of course he's starting to show signs of the Venom Zap, and then the agility, jumping, wall crawling, all that stuff. He ends up going to Genki, let him know, because he's the only person that he feels like he can trust with that. And of course Genki assumes that, oh, you must be a mutant then. That's so cool. You can be a superhero and everything like that. And of course Miles freaking out. He's too young to understand what the heck is going on. He doesn't want to be a mutant because the prejudices that his father have against them. He doesn't want that, on his head or his family's head, and because he feels like going to get his family in trouble. All that stuff is overwhelming for a 13-year-old. But he's slowly starting to like take on. It's like when you get these spider powers, like you can't help but want to do something with them. And so they come across this burning building. It's almost very shot for shot for the first Spider-Man movie, where Peter jumps in to save a baby in a burning building. But at that time, he didn't have his spider powers. He just did it as regular Peter Parker, because he can't help but want to do something. And Miles, and not with his face covered, and nobody saying anything or like putting two together weirdly, uses spider abilities, jumps high up, get inside the building, saves this little girl, and everybody's cheering on. And then Miles jumps away, and of course Genki is just like praising him, and it was like, man, that was awesome, you knocked it out of the park. But of course Miles is in the alley puking, and understandably he just did something. It's all sheer adrenaline. Once everything calms down and it's like clarity hits him, it's like oh my god, it's like I can't believe what I just did. And I imagine that would be more than likely the appropriate reaction. But it was like awesome display from Miles. Then Genki decides to get kind of like the movie, actually purchase a Spider-Man Halloween costume to give to Miles, because this is when like Peter Parker dies, and he's there at the tail end, because after he was fighting Green Goblin on his front lawn. And of course, you wonder why Gwen Stacy and is here. You'll see later on in the because there's 28 issues here. Later on, once Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane and Aunt May try to help Miles out with his journey, Gwen mentions that because of the whole Carnage symbiote, if you recall, seemingly killing her. Turns out there was like some kind of like a fluid exchange, some kind of thing where it preserved her DNA and she ended up coming back, kind of situations. And I'm pretty sure it was in that second long run that I didn't read that leads up to his death. So now everybody knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man and he's dead. And the world at this point, I mean, like, this is the world, but also New York in and of itself is rocked at this point. Anybody who knew Peter Parker in his personal life is, now it's kind of like, rocked with like just, oh my God, unbelievable. It's like, because especially J. Jonah Jameson, I say, I mean, aside from Aunt May, of course, but J. Jonah Jameson, it's like, especially after the events of this massive flood that occurred at the tail end of the first issue, first run of Ultimate Spider-Man, where this massive flood came in and nearly destroyed New York because of the whole situation with Magneto and the X-Men that killed lots of people, including the ultimate version of Daredevil. And Jonah was witness to Spider-Man just saving a bunch of people, risking his life to just like hauling ass and just like diving in, saving people, braving like all the elements, that's doing whatever he can to save as many lives as possible. And upon like the realization on discovering who he is, gives him a clarity on how like there's a reason why he probably wear a mask, because there's lots of people that he had people that he cared about that he didn't want any harm coming to them because of his heroic exploits. We'll get to that situation soon. So now Miles feels like so without a Spider-Man, there has to be a Spider-Man. And he comes to realize he's not a mutant. He's just, once he realized he got bit by a spider, he's like, okay, now I'm Spider-Man now. And he didn't feel like he needed to be a hero, because it's kind of like the movies, like he's not assured of what he wants to do. But now that Peter Parker's gone, the world needs a Spider-Man, and now he has spider powers. He feels like he has to step up now. Of course, he got all the spider agility and everything like that. And of course, his first outing doesn't go off too well, considering it's so soon after Peter Parker's death that, it feels like, dude, not cool. Then he runs into Ultimate Jessica Drew, who in this universe happens to be a clone of Peter Parker, because the whole Miles Warren situation, can I imagine with the cloning from the whole Carnage DNA from that sample that Ben Reilly character took in that adventure, end up creating Jessica Drew, who's just like if I kind of imagine it's like maybe if it's kind of like Mayday Parker kind of situation, like just Peter's almost like Peter's daughter, but not. Matter of fact, it's more akin to like Laura, the female Wolverine, because she's a clone of Logan, so it's kind of akin to that, where it's just a female version, like if Peter's parents had a daughter instead of a boy. Get this. And she's just like, just ticked off that not only there's a kid running around in an Spider-Man outfit, just completely selling the name of Spider-Man, but also is an immature kid, and she demands to know where he got his powers, and of course she ends up bringing him to Shield because he's a Shield agent. And you see like he meets Sam Jackson, Nick Fury, along with Ultimate, Hawkeye, and Iron Man. And of course they're rocked as well, because when I covered the event where Miles Morales meets Peter Parker, it was in that, I believe, where Nick comes clean about how he regrets not training immediately, because if you recall my review on Ultimate Peter Parker, where he wanted to wait until he was of legal age, 18, before he gets trained properly under his wing. And same thing with this universe's Captain America, but he died too soon before that. So now it's like they don't want to make those kind of same mistakes with Miles. So you have like a heart to heart with Miles and make a comment about the costume, which he ultimately gives Miles the classic red and black costume. It was around this time when Ultimate Electro breaks out and Miles can actually show Nick what he can do, that gives kind of an approval to Fury that, like, yeah, like this kid has some potential, and he helped take down Electro, one of Spider-Man's deadliest enemies. So now he's off, like he's like New York's newest Spider-Man. And of course he saves the, he's going around saving the day, stopping like muggers and everything like that. And of course, like any true blue Spider-Man kind of story, the cops gotta hate him and try to take shots at him. And of course, in this universe's Betty Brant is on the outs with Jameson, because unlike most other iterations of Betty Brant, she's more very, a super opportunist, where she's willing to sell out this kid in order to like get like a byline, and it's like all the worst features of, well, nearly all the worst features of Lois Lane. And of course, she's not understanding Jonah's point of view on how, like, this person probably has people he needs to protect. That's why he's wearing like a mask and everything like that. She is pretty much trying to blow her off every which way he can. Yeah, and yeah, she doesn't have credible evidence, but she's like also trying to like expose a person who's trying to do good, and she can't see it. She's only seeing like how she can profit off of this in some manner. And of course, Miles is also tangling really showing this stuff against like well, of course he dealt with Electro being his first like big superhero fight, but then you got Ultimate Omega Red, and of course that Venom Blast bails this guy out all too often, and even affected, because it runs on, I guess, a different polarity, it even affected Max Dillon despite him having electrical powers. But it just would have been nice where it's like you get to see him take down a foe that's not a mugger, like a superhero, a super villain foe, without the need for the Venom Blast to bail him out, because it does seems like a bail just in case break glass kind of situation that he cracks all the time. Without, sure, he's not as smart as Peter, because Peter doesn't have that power, so he more often than not has to think outside the box to take down somebody like Electro or somebody. And just, I feel personally that Miles utilizes that zap way too often without, you know, trying to resort to just knocking them out the old-fashioned way. It's like, oh, this is too tough for me, zap, I just want to be done with it kind of situation. It's seemed way too easy for him. I'm not saying that it should, because some might say like, oh, it should maybe tire him out after he used it. Which, then again, it could help, because if it exhausts him to a certain extent, there's got to be some kind of drawback until he mastered it, or his body kind of grew into it or something, where he doesn't want to use it unless he absolutely have to, forcing him to kind of work around using that so he can take down a bad guy. Because I don't want to use my Venom Blast because I'll be vulnerable and exhausted, you know, so let's take this guy down. Let's take down Electro using this fire hose that's nearby, or like a fire hydrant or something like that. You know, thinking, because he's going to Brooklyn Visions, he's obviously got some, you know, scientific, you know, aptitude. But then after spending some time in Mexico dealing with some criminal activity, and you know, with like Scorpion, Aaron realizes that his nephew is Spider-Man fairly quickly, because just like in a video game, because I think it's better explained there than anywhere else, because not even a movie, because he just had to pull off his mask to figure that out, but in the game it's better handled, where he easily explains, oh, the moves that you're pulling off reminds you of the moves I've seen you, like I taught you when we was playing basketball. Here he just feels like, oh, new Spider-Man, it has to be Miles. It's never really truly, maybe it's because he's in Mexican prison for a minute, somebody read it to him, but I doubt it had anything of notable interest. And why would like Mexican prisons get New York newspapers? Anyway, I doubt we'll have any kind of notable evidence, you know, linking Miles in any kind of ways that he would pick up on. He just happened to know. It's almost like a lucky guess. So he has Miles meet him in secret in order to recruit Miles into helping him take down the Scorpion, because he's vying for the Kingpin position. And he's going from like a low-level thief to, you know, like a considerable person of interest. According to Miles, Nick Fury got him on his radar. So, of course, Miles, after having earlier in the story, having a talk with his father as to why him and his brother don't get along, and he comes clean about it, that, you know, him and his brother used to do, like, were acting up as children. But eventually I met your mother. I kind of like, got my act together and grew out of that. But Aaron kept on going, and I just couldn't have you mix up any mess he might be in. So now the whole view on, because he has a very kind of rose-colored glasses of his uncle. You know, in a lot of iterations of Miles Morales, that is the case. But comes to the realization that his uncle not as cool as he initially thought, and on top of that, now his own uncle is forcing him into something that he doesn't want to do, which no relative should put another relative in a position like that. Like you know, because you couldn't get your brother to continue on this life of crime along with you. Now you're trying to get your nephew involved. It's like, oh, I can set where you can truly be a hero. I'll just set things up so you can actually have to. You just got to help him with his thing. Of course, he helps him deal with the Scorpion. Oh, by the way, I had this image up here because there's this third roommate that doesn't last long, but I bring it up because he looks straight up like the movie look of Miles Morales with the hair and everything like that. It's just the way he looks just like the animated movie. I just thought I'd bring that up because like, wow, it looks straight up like Miles Morales in the movie. But anyway, of course, he agrees, but Aaron tests him out, his skills and everything like that. So they go and deal with the Scorpion, and and according to Miles, this is the first time he actually get punched in the face. Because I love that last image in the panel. It's like he's getting like woozy. It's like I never got hit in the head before. But he managed to take down Scorpion, literally dragging him out in front of the building where the cops are convening. And he's telling everybody like, here's Scorpion, is a bad guy, he needs to be arrested, he done all this criminal activity and blah blah blah. And he leaves him for the cops, and he's trying to find his uncle. His uncle just dipped out, leaving him. This really shows his uncle's true colors and why he should not be messing around with that kind of guy. And of course, Aaron's also threatening Miles of, blurting out his secret to his parents. That's how he got him to ultimately come. But after this whole situation, Miles decides to come clean himself because he doesn't want to be a part of whatever mess his uncle is trying to get him involved in. They ultimately get into like a fight, like a straight up fight. Like, luckily, Miles, despite being 13, has super strength and agility, so he can actually duke it out with somebody who's his, senior. And the fight carries on all through the neighborhood in in the midst of the chaos. Miles had to save a bunch of people because of the fight that been carrying on, and he ends up zapping his uncle's suit. He was hoping to just neutralize him, but not realizing his suit was also shorted, caused it to explode, and he ended up causing the death of his uncle. And of course he didn't mean to, but this kind of rocked him. And it's like in the movie, his father comes see him to let him know about his uncle's death and everything like that. So it was definitely devastating. And this also brings up on the Avengers radar. And Steve, I don't like the look of Steve Rogers, Ultimate Steve Rogers here, because it kind of reminds me of the Avengers game, where it seems like you get to upgrade the suit in all these different kind of armor pieces, and that's what it looked like. And I do not like it at all. I I don't like Tony's hairstyle here either. It's, you know, very dumb looking. They both look almost like meatheads, almost. But clearly Steve here, you know, has personal issues he's working through, because he feel like he failed Peter Parker because he's supposed to have been training him, but he never got around to it, and Peter ultimately died, and if he feels responsible for that. Well, now he feels like, okay, this kid should not be out there doing what he's doing. He's way too young for this. And Tony, rightfully so, pointed out to him, well, I remember somebody, despite being too young to go into war, did so anyway. So it was like, glass houses, but then Miles ended up meeting up because Gwen staying with Aunt May because they only have each other at this point, because Gwen's mom abandoned her and the father died, and she stayed with Aunt May and Peter. And Peter died, now it's only Aunt May, so they only have each other at this point. And so they was in Paris trying to get away from it all, and they found in the newspapers, just like Aaron, that there's a new Spider-Man running around, and Miles reveals himself and everything like that, and because like Miles brings up that to Gwen, like, oh, we met during Peter's funeral. I asked you, like, why did he did what he did? Why did he wear a mask? Of course, understandably, it was Peter's funeral, so like Gwen was kind of snippy to Miles at that time, but of course she was aggrieved, so it's like I can't really hold it totally against her. But they come to like give Miles Peter's web shooters and the formula they kept, how to make more web fluid, because Miles doesn't have like web shooters yet. Steve comes in and steps up. It's like, no, you can't be Spider-Man. And it's like, and Gwen rightfully so steps up and say like, you're a jerk, Captain America. It's getting Cap the business. And it's like, yeah, I don't like, because the Ultimate Universe's Avengers here, they're called like the Ultimates. They're kind of a-holes in a way, because Steve, that we know in the main 616, would not tell somebody they they want to do something. Because if you recall last year when I did my like a month long in July, a month long Captain America reviews for movies and comic books, my Captain America comic book event called the United States of Captain America, where you learn about all these different people who across the US took up the mantle of Captain America to help out in their particular areas. And there's one where this girl in this college took up the mantle of Captain America to help her friends and other students against those snooty rich kids that try to use their influence to skate around the law and do whatever to students without any kind of consequences. And he made like a note about like, if like the school administrators dare to like expel this girl, I will come down there myself and deal with it, kind of situation. So this Captain America, I get it's different universe, different kind of mindset from the same core, but kind of branches off in a different kind of mindset of how to, he doesn't think like, oh, he shouldn't do it. He's just not of age to do it responsibly. So he's like, oh, my word's final. You're not old enough to do this. So if I see you go out there again, I will come and arrest you, and then I will take you to your parents and tell them myself. So it's kind of like an a-hole move. But then like the Rhino shows up and starts tearing up the neighborhood, and with the help of Miles, he managed to help Steve take down the Rhino. And it's like a funny moment where he just looks over to Miles, like, well, you still need more training. So Miles in his head thinking like, oh my god, I can actually like be part of the Ultimates. They can train me and I can be a better hero. Of course, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s headquarters is called the Triskelion, that's off the shore of New York, where in the main 616 that doesn't exist. They have the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier that takes them to places. That's S.H.I.E.L.D.'s primary HQ. Well, currently in the 616 universe comics, mainline comics, S.H.I.E.L.D. technically doesn't exist. It goes back and forth depending on the writer, you know, going through his particular adventure. But all in all, there's no S.H.I.E.L.D. organization anymore. But around this time, the U.S. is dealing with like, you know, Hydra and like a fraction of the U.S. situation, and you know, if you're reading through this, maybe it's, you know, explain more detail during like the Ultimates mainline comics, so you'll know what's going on with all that. But by and large, there's trying to be like a takeover in the U.S. that's splitting the country apart. Where did you hear that from? It's almost like, it's like, you know, art imitating life situation. And of course, Miles is there. He happened to be there while trying to, like, you know, recruit himself. Hydra is trying to take over, doing strategic attacks on the U.S. and on S.H.I.E.L.D. And Miles is helping out Captain America deal with the situation. Once they're, you know, Hydra started making that move, Cap decides to fulfill the role of President of the United States to help, you know, deal with this. I guess something happened to like the president because it was attacking the White House, so I'm assuming the president is dead and everybody wants Captain America to fill the position. So it has been instances in different what if stories where Captain America became president of the United States. Mainline comics, he really doesn't want the job. So now it's like a full-on kind of like a war situation where, like, you know, the Ultimates and the U.S. military is trying to deal with Hydra and, you know, incels. And of course, like I said, you're dealing with Betty Brant trying to, like, you know, seize every opportunity despite the dangers she might put, because she suspects Miles' dad to being the new Spider-Man, despite this, you know, despite the new Spider-Man being small and very lanky, assuming this taller guy who has a decent build for his body being this new Spider-Man was kind of like nonsensical. Like, you can't differentiate between two body types. But Jonah ain't trying to hear it, and she kind of put two and two together that, oh, this new Spider-Man, she, you know, happened to glance that he's like a black kid on the inside, and she suspects like, oh, the guy got some relations to the Prowler because they had this kind of conversation going on, like, because she recorded like the last dying breath of Aaron. It's like, you're just like me. And she's having this talk in the boardroom at one point in the Bugle, and Robbie, you know, chimes in. It's like, you know, how long you lived in New York? You think every African American is related to each other? And like, you know, Betty kind of rolls her eyes like, come on, you know, it's not like that. You know, I understand the conversation that they had means they obviously knew each other. But Jensen is trying to listen to it, so she leaves. But then upon coming home, she runs into Venom, who kills her. And Ultimate Venom is back, but it's not Eddie Brock like, you know, Gwen and MJ might assume that it would have been. And it turns out it comes from Roxxon, because that's the ultimate like bad guy in this adventure, who got a hold of the symbiote and took over a host that's not Eddie. And I guess the symbiote is running on residual memory. And someone like because it's never fully explained. It's like, because he ended up specifically tracking down the Morales family, because he actually goes to Jefferson's home. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You know, Miles ended up literally fighting in a war. He's 13 years old. I want to get a shot of Ultimate Falcon, who looks just like how Anthony Mackie kind of looked in Captain America: Winter Soldier. So they're fighting a war against Hydra and their forces, and of course Hawkeye being the one, you know, put in charge by Steve, and you know, instructs who gets paired up with whom. And he was instructed by Steve, who relays a message to Drew that you're the two Spider people, you're teaming up. And of course, Jessica, being in her feelings, refused to, like, you know, team up with him, because she's, you know, having like a personal grudge, unfair grudge against Miles that she eventually comes clean about at the end of all this. Miles ends up taking on Giant Woman himself, and an impressive display of feat here, because he had to zap her multiple times, because he says like a large, you know, individual. He had to zap her in certain spots in her body in order to get a full effect, because one zap wasn't going to cut it. And he managed to take down Giant Woman in a hilarious fashion, where he just ends up landing on top of her belly, and he just pokes his head out, and like, of course, you know, he pokes his head out and you see like an image of her, you know, like, you know, rising up, looking directly at her hoo-ha. And of course, Jessica embraces Miles and glad that he's like all right after a bunch of SHIELD agents come pick him up. And she tells him that she will eventually come clean about, like, you know, her, you know, origins of being a clone and everything like that, because, you know, she telling me what he did was a great thing, he did a great job, but it's like she'll later come clean about her being like a clone. And it's like, you know, like, you know, Peter Parker deep down would want me to continue on to do the good with the powers that I have. And it's like, just, you know, I just like, you know, because, you know, she has like a, you know, like a brother and sister probably kind of relationship, so she feels like very protective of her surrogate brother's mantle. Of course, we got or she kind of gets over it after seeing like Miles, you know, handle himself. It's not a just some kid just playing Spider-Man. And Maria Hill, who's a detective now, former SHIELD agent, and she investigating the homicide of Betty Brant, who Jameson's, you know, is trying to help make sure that, you know, whoever did harm to her is brought to justice, despite the falling out they had. And of course, Maria Hill, you know, being a SHIELD agent, clearly knows and figures out that, you know, oh, Miles Morales is Spider-Man. And of course, while Gwen and MJ is just like trying to help deny the situation, it's kind of like, dude, at this point, you might as well come clean, because it's like she points out like, oh, Peter Parker's you know, friends that he knew is, you know, somehow is, you know, got, you know, are friends with Miles Morales, who is the son, who is the nephew of well-known criminal who fought this new Spider-Man, is all too coincidental. And of course, like I said, like Venom showed up, injures Jefferson, and Miles steps in, fights off Venom. He slinks away, and of course he ends up heading off to the hospital where this new Venom is not done. He wants to, like, he's operating on like a parameter or something, like like a particular it's kind of like Brawly, where it's like it's like guy, or even like not necessarily Brawly. I think like the androids, where it's like their number one priority is to kill Goku. It's like that. Venom is like, I gotta kill Spider-Man. And of course Gwen and MJ try to give Miles some insight on how to deal with the situation, and Miles goes to the hospital despite his mother's efforts to help take down this Venom. And thanks to his Venom Zap, which I would say electricity shouldn't have worked, but then it's like super heated, because if you recall from my review on Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter landed on some power lines, and even though his electricity is kind of superheated and kind of bursts into flames, causing it to affect the symbiote, I guess it makes sense that it can still work in this kind of situation. But in the process, because the cops were shooting at the thing too, a stray bullet hit Rio, and she of course figured out that her son is this new Spider-Man. Once again, I don't know how she put that together, and don't say mother's intuition, because that's BS, because like, no, how she put two and two together. So she ends up dying in Miles' arms, and of course you do the whole obligatory I'm Spider-Man no more situation. So a year goes by, and of course there's like a potential love interest between Ultimate Kate Bishop. Here looks like a kind of like an emo chick. I got a thing for like emo and goth chicks, I swear I do. Of course, Miles is a little taller, got a little bit more of like a muscle tone to him a bit, but he quit being Spider-Man. He hasn't been Spider-Man for an entire year. And the whole situation with like the nation, and they're dealing with Hydra, is probably settled at this point. But people like Genki and Jessica and Gwen all trying to like get Miles back on that horse, but he's like, he lost his mom. And of course I think they were pushing him a little bit. They said like, oh, like, we left you alone, it's been a year, but don't you think you need to get back out there, kind of situation? And it's like, I don't know, like how, because I think they handle it fairly enough, but it's like you cannot tell him when he should get over it. You gotta let him do it on his time. And it's like, I think they're being very pushy, because they figure like, oh, a year's gone by, you should be able to get back to being Spider-Man now. It's like, don't do that, okay? I don't care it's been a year. I don't care it's been 2 years. He has to be ready on his own time. It's kind of like, it kind of irks me. It's kind of like when people should telling other people when to forgive somebody. Maybe they're not ready to forgive somebody. Maybe they're not ready to get back on the course. It's time whenever they feel like it's time. Or at the very least, have him seek some kind of counseling to help. I imagine he should have, but you probably need to see somebody to talk to in order to get through this, because he's aggrieved. And he's a child, and it's probably affecting him more so than most adults could probably handle. Um, then we are dealing with some new heroes on the block, Cloak and Dagger, who's attacking Bombshell because Cloak and Dagger were two teenagers who, in most iterations, were experimented on, and they're kind of intrinsically tied to each other, like a yin and yang situation, where Cloak has teleporting shadow powers, while Dagger has light energy, blades that she can fire off. But the thing is, luckily they're a couple, but they have to stick together because without the light from Dagger, Cloak will get absorbed by his own shadow, and the light kind of keeps that at bay. And without Cloak, Dagger will burn too brightly, and either way it gets very dangerous, for life endangering for both of them. So they have to stick together to keep the light, to a minimum with the darkness, and the light keeping the shadows at bay to avoid Cloak from getting enveloped. So they can't stray too far apart for too long. Don't know what's the time limit on that danger being imminent on them. Let's say maybe like a day kind of situation. I know there's gotta be a story with that where it's like, okay, they have to track each other down in order to get close to each other again before they end up getting themselves killed by their own powers. So they're trying to track down people they suspect involved in their experimentation. So they track down Bombshell because they think they're because the people involved are the ultimate version of Nathaniel Essex, Stern, who I believe is like the ultimate version of the leader. I believe that's the real name of the leader, and a couple other people I can't. And Zemo, not Zemo, no. The guy in like a TV in his stomach, that guy, Armanzola, yeah. And there's like a woman I don't recall. So they go after Bombshell, who has like kind of like explosive powers kind of situation. And the fight carries on in a neighborhood nearby where Miles and Jefferson are, but Gwen's nearby is telling him like, you should do something, and like it's like Miles doesn't want to do it. He's not stepping in. Like, who is this other person? Because I don't not recognize her. Dr. Layla Miller. She might be somebody. Samuel Stearns, that was it. But she might be somebody in the comments. I'm just not familiar with the name. And they were responsible of experimenting on this two couple who was supposed to be going out on a date and got into an accident, and they doctored the medical records reflecting, oh, they died in an accident, but the bodies were accidentally cremated, so they gave this cremation stuff to the parents. So far as they know, their children are dead, so they can just do whatever. You're talking about like some evil scientists here. And it was, I gotta say, and this might sound weird, even though Jessica Drew is typically different and not remotely related to Peter Parker in any kind of way, in Ultimate Universe, she is like a clone of Peter. I gotta say, if Peter Parker was born as a girl, he's a very hot girl. It's weird, right? It's like, I'm looking at it, it's like in the eyes and the way it's drawn, it's like clearly it's like a bit of features of Peter here and there because it's the same DNA. But it's like, oh, Peter's really hot as a girl. It's weird. It's like, I don't know. It's kind of like the whole Loki and Sylvie situation. It's like I'm glad, like, hopefully Peter and Jessica didn't make out or anything like that, like Loki and Sylvie, because it's all around gross. But thanks to her letting Miles know that I'm not trying to push you here, but part of me is Peter Parker, and part of me would, if Peter was here, he would tell you that it's okay. You can, you know, we all mess up. You know, we all been through tragedies, but we have to, you know, part of being Spider-Man is learn to get back up when you are knocked down. It's almost like the movies, but instead of it being a different version of Peter Parker, it's just Jessica Drew here giving him that kind of dialogue. So they gave him that kind of encouragement to get back out there and being back as Spider-Man. Now, there's moments reading through this, I can't help but think about the music from the movies. It's like "What's Up, Danger," or like Post Malone, "Sunflower" here and there. I can't help but think that movie is so good. So now Roxxon, who's working with these scientists to experiment on people to create super soldiers, just like in the way Norman Osborn was trying to do so, he hires this universe's Taskmaster, who almost like, because the mainline Taskmaster, he has to, you know, he's able to copy moves of certain people, but he couldn't copy their powers. Here, this universe's Taskmaster can actually copy powers. As you can see him tangling with Peter and Jessica Drew. Although they're having a tough time because he's like taking on their strength. But then Bombshell shows up because they was tracking her down in the first place. But, you know, she's just been on the run. But then she's, you know, because, you know, the Spider People was trying to help her. She jumps in and try to take him on, but he ends up copying her powers. But now they're tussling on top of this building, and it's like they're having a tough go of it. But then here come Cloak and Dagger showing up to step in, and they finally take down this dude because he was, man, it's probably like the big bad, you know, the big bad superhero that they ever like. They have to like work together in order to just take down the sucker. Then they show up at the lab, and it's a cool display of Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Cloak and Dagger, and Bombshell showing up to deal with, you know, Roxxon, who made a stupid, cruel, offhanded comment about Miles's mom. And so he webs him, yank him out the window, and have him falling for a few minutes before he rescues him, and have him dangling over the side of the building while he's still talking all that mess about his mom and how like, oh, I didn't want to make that spider, I helped you, like I own you. It's very Norman Osborn, same way he did that to Peter. But the cops are showing up by helicopter, but because Spider-Woman is SHIELD agent, she has them turn around and have SHIELD agents to come pick him up. And even though she brought up that SHIELD were working with Roxxon to try to find like a potential recreation of the Captain America super soldier, but she points out, I don't care what I have to do, I'm going to point out the fact that you, because that's why she got Miles to help come back again, because these people were trying to recreate our Spider, trying to recreate, Captain America so badly, they end up causing the creation of, Peter, me, and you. They end up causing the creation of the Hulk. And now they were experimenting on these kids, Cloak and Dagger and Bombshell. We got to stop them because they won't stop. They have all this money, they're rich, they're greedy, they're arrogant. They won't stop, and we have to stop them. So they come in and they also take down all the scientists, which is weird because they have abilities, but especially with someone like Essex, who we know as Mr. Sinister in the mainline comics, who have, probably stronger abilities in the mainline comics. Here, he gets taken down fairly easily. but it was like an awesome display of these super teens working together. Well, Jessica Drew, I don't think it's like a teen per se. It's, you know, definitely, you know, adult, just like early adult, and takes down these scientists. And now that he's back on that horse, he just owns, just like in the movie, he owns it. Like, no, it goes back to Genki and tells him, I'm back, man. You know, I'm Spider-Man. So, man, you know, it's a good origin story for Miles Morales. Very good. Aside from a few cons that I point out here and there, like some people putting certain clues together that they should not be able to, or at least doesn't show how they come to certain conclusions that they should not have gone to that easily. But it's a really good comic. Very well done. I'm super eager to read, because it's been a very, very long time since I read this comic, but the first time Miles Morales meets main 616 Peter Parker for the first time. I'm looking forward to reading that event again, because it's kind of like a mini event. So look forward to that in the following week. But yeah, that's all my reviews that I covered today. I covered this, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Season 1, John Wick Chapter 4, as well as Emperor's New Groove as far as reviews for this week. They should be up on my YouTube channel in a few minutes, if not already. And let me know what you guys think of Miles Morales as a whole. Let me know, do you have a favorite Miles Morales story? Do you find the movie more engaging than the comic? Or is there, like, you know, a certain TV show with Miles Morales in that's like very good? Yeah, leave a comment below. And I will see you guys in a little while as I start getting back into RE4 Remake, as well as some Hogwarts Legacy. So I will see you guys in a little while. Peace.